Okay, let's write our first HTML page. I have here Web Matrix 3 started. I'm going to select New, Empty Site. That's going to show us a Files pane on the left. So I can right click the folder and say New File. I'm going to select HTML and I'm going to name this Index, which will be the home page. You name it Index so the browser tries to find this page first and it automatically loads it. That's what the home page is called, Index. When the new index file is created, it gives you what they call boilerplate code to start you off. It just sticks it in there for you. We're going to get rid of this though so we can learn how to write everything ourselves and what every little piece does. So on the first line of our document, we're going to write the doctype statement, which tells the browser what version of HTML we're about to use. So for us, we're always going to write it like so. We're going to say open angle bracket, exclamation point, doctype HTML, close angle bracket. That is what tells the browser, hey, we're about to use HTML version 5, which is the current version. The older versions had different doctype statements that were longer and different, but for HTML5, we're going to use this one. The 5 is built in. So every HTML document has one main element called the root element, and that's going to be this HTML element. This is an open tag and a close tag. So in HTML, elements often have opening and closing tags. This is how we say the HTML starts here and it stops there. So the closing tag has this slash character in there to say this is the closing tag. So opening tags, closing tags, and stuff in the middle. HTML element has two things inside of it all the time. These two things that are inside, we call them children. The first child of the HTML element is called the head element. So we have an opening head tag, stuff in between that we're going to write later, and a closing head tag. So there's your head element from the opening tag to the closing tag. The other child that every HTML document has is the body element. So we do a body opening tag. We're going to put stuff in the middle later, and we close the body element with the body closing tag. So these are the two children that every HTML document has all the time. And there's your general structure of an HTML document. Now, HTML elements with starting tags can have additional settings that we can include to tell the browser extra information. In this case, we want to say that the language we're going to write the page in is going to be English. So here I'm going to add what we call an attribute. Think of it as an extra setting for the element. So in the opening HTML tag, I'm going to say space and type lang equals quotation marks en for English and close quotation marks. So this is an extra setting saying we're going to be in English, and this whole thing here we call an attribute. There's going to be many other attributes that we see as we learn HTML. This is your first one, and it just helps the browser know what language it's in. So things like Google Chrome and other browsers can know the language and maybe help you translate or help other people translate your page into other languages if they need to. The head element has things about your page. It's a lot of extra information and not much of it is ever visible. The one thing that will be visible is the title element, which will be the title of the page that is on the tab in the browser and in the search engine results as the main link. So let's just call it my first page. This is the title content. So right now if I pick run, it will pop open in the browser, and notice we don't see anything in the body because we didn't write anything in the body. However, if you look up at the tab, we'll see my first page, which is what we put as the title. So the title content will appear here, and it will appear in the bookmarks if people bookmark your page, and it'll also appear in the search results as the main link to get to that page if people search for you and find you. In HTML5, a title is always required in the head tag. One other thing to always put in the head tag when you're writing an HTML5 page is a meta tag that tells what character set you're going to be writing in. We don't have to understand this now. We just know that it's good to put it in. A character set is a set of all characters that you're going to be using, and we set ours as UTF-8, which is the character set that all HTML5 pages use for the most part. So that's just part of, like I mentioned earlier, the boilerplate code to put in there to set your page up to get started. Notice this is one of the few elements that are called self-closing elements. They don't have a closing tag. There's not a meta closing tag here. We'll see that a few times in a few different places. Most of the tags, however, though, have opening and closing and content in the middle for the most part. So we'll see a lot of those too. So let's go to the body and see something appear on the screen. So for our first ever body element, let's do what we call a header element and just say hello world. We'll explain more about headers later, but let's just get something on the screen here. Notice I have an opening H1 and a closing H1 tag with hello world written in there as the content. So if I run this, I can see my hello world appear in the browser. It's big, it's bold. That's part of what H1 does by default, and we'll learn later how we can change how this looks. But for now, pat yourself on the back because you just wrote your first web page ever. And if we right click, you can always view your source, what the browser is reading, by saying view source, and there's your code in there that you had written that then gets interpreted by the browser and rendered on the screen like so. One last thing to consider before we wrap it up is comments. Every language that you encounter when you become a programmer will have a way to write comments. Comments are notes to yourself and to other programmers that will not be rendered on the screen. So here, and you write them like this with an open angle bracket, an exclamation point, 2 dashes, and then 2 dashes and close angle bracket to stop it. And in the middle, you can write anything you want. And when you run that, it will not be shown on the screen. These are background comments for you as a developer or other people that might be using your code later or maintaining your code. If we right click and say view source, we'll see that the comment is included in the source that the browser is reading, but it's not rendered on the page as you see here. So that's comments. So now we covered the basic structure of an HTML5 page. We covered what an element is with its opening and closing tags, the HTML element that has 2 children all the time, the head and the body. We covered how to set a title, how to write an initial hello world to the page, and what comments are. Now that we got the basics out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty and see all the cool things we can do with HTML.